Marcus Chen pulled his jacket tighter as the wind howled across the rocky mountain face. Snow whipped around him like tiny knives, but he kept moving up the steep path. He had climbed these mountains for 20 years, and today felt like any other day. The weather was harsh, but Marcus knew how to handle harsh weather. He stopped to check his gear when something bright flashed across the gray sky above him. At first, he thought it might be lightning, but the light was different. It moved in a straight line and made a sound like screaming metal. Marcus watched as the bright object crashed into the mountainside, about 2 miles away from him. That was not a plane, Marcus said to himself. The crash site sent up a column of smoke that the wind quickly scattered. Something in his gut told him to go look, even though his survival training said to stay away from unknown dangers. Marcus changed direction and started climbing toward the crash site. The snow was getting deeper, and the temperature was dropping fast. Normal people would have turned back hours ago. But Marcus was not normal people. He had spent his whole life in mountains like this. The cold was just another thing to deal with, like hunger or tiredness. It took him an hour to reach the crash site. What he found there made him stop and stare. The thing that crashed was not any aircraft he had ever seen. It looked like someone had taken a teardrop made of metal and covered it with lights that still blinked even though the craft was broken. The metal seemed to change colors as he looked at it, shifting from silver to blue to something he could not name. Steam rose from the wreckage, where the hot metal met the snow. Marcus could see a hole torn in the side of the craft. Something inside was moving, but very weakly. His rescue training kicked in, and he moved closer to look. Inside the craft, Marcus found something that made his mind struggle to understand what he was seeing. It looked like a person, but different. The skin had a blue tint to it, and the arms and legs were longer than they should be. The person wore some kind of suit that looked like it was made for space, but it was torn open in several places. The most strange thing was what looked like gills on the sides of the person's neck. They moved very slowly, like the person was having trouble breathing. The person's eyes were closed, and Marcus could see that this individual was dying from the cold. Marcus did not waste time wondering what this person was or where they came from. Someone was dying in front of him, and he knew how to stop that from happening. He pulled emergency supplies from his backpack and got to work. First, he checked for injuries. Besides the breathing problems and the cold, the person seemed okay. No broken bones that he could find. But the body temperature was dropping fast. Marcus had seen hypothermia many times, and this was bad hypothermia. He started to drag the unconscious person away from the metal wreckage. The craft was still giving off heat, but it was also giving off strange smells that made Marcus think it might not be safe to stay close to it. He found a spot about 50 feet away where some rocks blocked the worst of the wind. Marcus worked quickly to set up an emergency shelter. He used his climbing rope and emergency tarp to make a small space protected from the wind. Then he used pieces of metal from the crashed craft to help hold the tarp in place. The metal was very light but very strong, stronger than anything he had ever seen. Inside the shelter, Marcus started the most important work. He opened his sleeping bag and took off the person's torn suit. Underneath, the person wore thin clothing that was not meant for cold weather at all. The skin was cold as ice and turning darker blue. Marcus knew that skin-to-skin contact was often the fastest way to warm someone with severe hypothermia. He took off his own jacket and shirt and pulled the unconscious person against his chest inside the sleeping bag. The skin felt strange against his, cooler than human skin, and with a texture like very fine scales. He started a small fire using dry fuel tablets from his survival kit. The flames gave off heat and light inside the small shelter. Marcus also heated water and tried to get some warm liquid into the unconscious person's mouth. Most of it ran back out, but some went down. As the hours passed, Marcus felt the body against his start to warm up. The strange, gill-like things on the neck started moving more regularly. The person's breathing became deeper and more steady. Marcus kept feeding the fire and checking for signs of improvement. When the sun started to set, the person's eyes opened for the first time. They were large eyes, larger than human eyes, and they were the color of deep ocean water. The person looked around in confusion and fear, then looked directly at Marcus. Marcus smiled and spoke slowly. "You are safe now. You were very cold, but you are warming up." The person's mouth moved. But the sounds that came out were not words that Marcus recognized. They sounded like music, mixed with clicking noises. The person looked very confused and seemed to be asking questions that Marcus could not understand. Marcus pointed to himself and said clearly, "Marcus. My name is Marcus." Then he pointed to the other person and raised his eyebrows in a question. The person seemed to understand and made more musical sounds while pointing to herself. Marcus could not repeat the sounds, so he just nodded and smiled. Outside their small shelter, the storm was getting worse. But inside, next to the fire, two very different people were starting to figure out how to communicate. Marcus had no idea that he had just saved someone who was more important than he could imagine. The morning brought clearer skies, but the cold was still bitter. Marcus woke up to find the strange person sitting up and looking at a small device that had been pulled from the wreckage. The device made soft beeping sounds and showed pictures that moved on its surface. Marcus sat up slowly, not wanting to startle his unexpected companion. The person looked much better than the night before. The blue tint to the skin was lighter now, more natural looking. The gill-like structures on the neck moved steadily, and the large eyes were alert and intelligent. The person saw Marcus wake up and held out the device. On the screen, Marcus could see simple pictures, a stick figure that looked like him, and another that looked like the person he had rescued. Above them were symbols that meant nothing to Marcus. The person pointed to the device and then to Marcus. She made the musical clicking sounds again, but this time, a flat voice came from the device. The voice was broken and hard to understand, but Marcus could make out some words. "Thank you for help. Danger coming." Marcus felt his stomach drop. Danger? What kind of danger? The person worked with the device, touching different parts of the screen. More pictures appeared. These showed other figures, darker, and carrying what looked like weapons. Then the device showed what looked like flying machines. Others. "Look for me. They want. Hurt me." Marcus understood enough. Someone was hunting the person he had rescued, and they would probably come to this mountain to look for her. He pointed to himself and then to her, then made a gesture that meant, "We need to leave." The person nodded quickly. She seemed to understand that Marcus grasped the situation. She worked with the device again and showed him a picture of what looked like a map with stars on it. "I am," the broken voice said, "Princess Zarathul. My people. Far away." Marcus blinked in surprise. He had rescued a princess, an alien princess from somewhere among the stars. The whole situation was so strange that his mind almost could not process it. But he pushed those thoughts aside. Princess or not, alien or not, she was a person who needed help. "Okay, Princess," Marcus said slowly. "We need to move." Zarathul tried to stand up and immediately stumbled. Her legs were still weak from the hypothermia, and she was clearly not used to the gravity or the thin air at this altitude. Marcus caught her before she fell. "Take it slow," Marcus said. He helped her put on some of his spare clothes over her thin garments. The clothes were too big for her, but they would help keep her warm. He also gave her his spare gloves and hat. As they packed up the shelter, Marcus watched how Zarathul moved. She was clumsy on the rocky ground, but she learned quickly. After falling twice, she started watching where he put his feet and copying his movements. Marcus led them away from the crash site, heading higher up the mountain. Most people would go down towards civilization when in trouble. But Marcus had a different plan. He knew these mountains better than anyone. And he knew that the higher they went, the harder it would be for anyone to follow them. As they climbed, Marcus started teaching Zarathul basic survival skills. He showed her how to step on rocky ground without slipping. He taught her how to read the sky for weather changes. Most importantly, he showed her how to stay warm by moving the right way. Zarathul was a fast learner. Marcus could see that despite her elegant appearance, she was tough underneath. When she fell and scraped her hands on the rocks, she did not complain. She just got up and kept going. When the thin air made her breathe hard, she found ways to keep moving anyway. During their breaks, they worked on communication. Marcus taught her basic English words like cold, water, fire, and danger. Zarathul taught him that her name meant bright star in her language. The device helped translate more complex ideas. Through the broken translation, Marcus learned that Zarathul had been traveling between star systems when her ship was attacked. The people hunting her were from a rival group who wanted to stop her from making peace between different alien civilizations. Her escape pod had malfunctioned and brought her to Earth, which her people considered a death world because of its harsh conditions. Your world, the device translated her words, is very dangerous, very cold, very difficult. My people think no intelligent life could live here. Marcus laughed. Well, they were wrong about that. Zarathul looked at him with those large eyes and made sounds that the device translated as, yes, very wrong. You are more than intelligent. You are. The word does not translate. But you make impossible things happen. As they climbed higher, Marcus noticed that Zarathul was adapting faster than he expected. Her breathing was getting better in the thin air. She was learning to balance on the rocky paths. Most surprising of all, she seemed to be getting less affected by the cold. That evening, as Marcus built another shelter and fire, Zarathul helped in ways that surprised him. She had watched him work and was already learning to predict what he needed next. When he reached for rope, she handed it to him. When he needed rocks to anchor the shelter, she had already started gathering them. You learn fast, Marcus said, as they shared his simple dinner of trail food and hot tea. I have to, Zarathul replied through the device. My teachers always said that the mark of royalty is the ability to adapt and survive. I never understood what they meant before now. Marcus looked at her sitting by the fire, wearing his oversized clothes and learning to eat human food. She was far from any palace or comfort, but she was not giving up. She was getting stronger. Your teachers were smart people, Marcus said. That night, as the wind howled outside their shelter, Marcus stayed awake thinking about what they would face tomorrow. Somewhere below them, hunters with advanced technology were looking for Zarathul, but Marcus had advantages they could not imagine. He had the mountain. He had years of experience. And he had a princess who was learning to be a survivor. Tomorrow, the real test would begin. Marcus woke up to the sound of aircraft engines. But these engines sounded wrong. They hummed instead of roaring, and they moved too quietly for their size. He looked out through a small gap in their shelter and saw 3 dark shapes flying in formation across the valley below them. Zarathul, he whispered, shaking her gently awake. Your friends are here. She sat up quickly and looked where he was pointing. Her face went pale when she saw the aircraft. She grabbed her translation device and worked with it frantically. Not friends, the device said in its flat voice. Hunters. They have found the crash site. They will find us soon. Marcus had already started packing their gear. His military training from years ago was coming back to him. When you were outnumbered and outgunned, you used the terrain to your advantage. How good are their sensors? Marcus asked as he rolled up the sleeping bag. Zarathul thought for a moment before answering. Very good in space. But here, they are having problems. Your planet's magnetic field confuses their equipment. The weather interferes with their scans. Marcus smiled grimly. Good. That means they have to search the old-fashioned way. He led Zarathul higher up the mountain, away from the search area. The path he chose was dangerous even for an experienced climber. It wound around cliff faces and through areas where one wrong step could mean a fall of several hundred feet. Zarathul struggled at first, but Marcus could see her adapting in real time. Her balance was getting better. Her movements were becoming more confident. Most importantly, she was starting to read the mountain the way he did, understanding which rocks were solid and which ones might shift. You are getting good at this, Marcus told her during a brief rest. I have a good teacher, she replied, and I have strong motivation to stay alive. Behind them, the alien aircraft continued their search pattern. Marcus watched them through his binoculars and realized that the pilots were making mistakes. They were flying too high to see details, but when they came lower, the mountain winds made their aircraft unstable. They were clearly not used to flying in these conditions. They are having trouble, Marcus observed. Your people do not like rough weather, do they? My people have lived in climate-controlled environments for thousands of years, Zarathul explained. We have forgotten how to deal with natural conditions. That is why they think your world is impossible to live on. Marcus led them to a hidden cave he had used for shelter during previous climbs. The entrance was behind a waterfall that had frozen into curtains of ice. From the outside, it looked like solid rock. Inside, the cave was dry and protected from the wind. As they settled in, Marcus began planning their next moves. He spread out a map of the mountain and showed Zarathul the terrain ahead of them. If we keep going up, we reach areas where the weather gets very bad very quickly, Marcus explained. Your hunters will have even more trouble there. But it will be dangerous for us too. Zarathul studied the map with interest. You know this mountain like it is part of your own body. I have been climbing here for 20 years, Marcus said. Every path, every shelter, every dangerous spot. This mountain and I understand each other. That evening, as they shared another simple meal, Zarathul asked questions about human survival techniques. Marcus taught her how to read wind patterns by watching snow blow across the peaks. He showed her how to identify weak ice by the sound it made when tapped. He explained how to find shelter using the mountain's natural features. Your people survived on this world for thousands of years without advanced technology? She asked. Millions of years? Marcus corrected. We learned to adapt to anything. Hot deserts, frozen mountains, deep forests, wide oceans. Humans can live almost anywhere if they learn how. Zarathul was quiet for a long time after that. Marcus could see her, thinking hard, about something. The next morning brought bad news. The alien aircraft had landed at the crash site, and Marcus could see figures moving around on the ground. Through his binoculars, he watched them examine the area where he had first helped Zarathul. They found our trail, Marcus said. They will follow it here. Zarathul looked at the device that had been tracking them and made a decision. She smashed it against the rock wall of the cave until it broke into pieces. They were using that to track you? Marcus asked. Emergency beacon, she explained. I thought it might bring rescue. But it only brought hunters. Marcus looked at her with new respect. That was smart thinking. Now they had to move without leaving any trail the hunters could follow. Marcus led them up through areas where the wind would cover their footprints. He chose paths over solid rock where possible, and when they had to cross snow, he taught Zarathul how to step in his footprints to hide the fact that two people had passed. As they climbed higher, the air got thinner and the cold got worse. Marcus watched Zarathul carefully, expecting her to start having trouble. But something strange was happening. Instead of getting weaker, she seemed to be getting stronger. How are you feeling? Marcus asked during a rest stop. Different, she replied. The breathing is easier now. The cold does not hurt as much. I think my body is changing. Marcus had heard of high-altitude adaptation in humans, but this was happening much faster than normal. Zarathul's gill-like organs were moving more actively, and her skin seemed to be developing a different texture, more resistant to the cold. "Your people must be very adaptable," Marcus said. "We used to be," Zarathul replied. "Before we had machines to control our environment, we could change to fit different worlds. But we had forgotten how to do it. Being here is reminding my body of old abilities." That afternoon, they reached a point where Marcus could see the search teams far below them. The aliens were moving slowly, clearly struggling with the terrain and the altitude. They had equipment that probably worked well in normal conditions, but nothing about this mountain was normal. "They will not give up," Zarathul warned. "They cannot return to their leaders without proof of my death." Marcus nodded. "Then we do not let them catch us. And we make this mountain work for us instead of them." He led them to a narrow ridge that would be almost impossible for the hunters to follow without climbing equipment. The path was barely wide enough for one person, with drops of thousands of feet on both sides. "Are you ready for this?" Marcus asked. Zarathul looked at the dangerous path ahead and then back at the hunters below. As they started across the ridge, Marcus realized that Zarathul was no longer the same person he had found dying in the crashed ship. The mountain was changing her, just like it had changed him over the years. She was becoming a survivor. The hunters made a mistake that morning. Instead of following the difficult path that Marcus and Zarathul had taken, they tried to use their technology to take a shortcut. Marcus watched through his binoculars as their aircraft attempted to land on a flat area that looked safe from above. He knew that area. The flat ground was a false snow shelf, hiding a deep crevasse. When the aircraft landed, the snow collapsed, and the craft disappeared into the crack in the mountain. "One down," Marcus said grimly. "But they will call for help." Zarathul was watching the remaining search teams with her enhanced vision. "The leader is angry. He is pushing his people harder now. They will make more mistakes." Marcus had spent the morning teaching Zarathul how to move silently on snow and ice. She was learning faster than any human student he had ever had. Her longer limbs gave her better balance, and her adapting body seemed to understand exactly how much weight to put on each step. "We need to make them even angrier," Marcus said. "Angry people make bad decisions." He led Zarathul to a position above one of the search teams. The aliens were struggling through deep snow, clearly exhausted and frustrated. Their advanced suits were not designed for this kind of work, and Marcus could see that they were overheating from the effort. Marcus picked up a large rock and threw it down the mountain. It started a small avalanche that buried the path the search team was using. No one was hurt, but they would have to backtrack and find another route. "You are making the mountain fight for us," Zarathul observed. "The mountain does not care about anyone," Marcus replied. "But if you know how it works, you can make it seem like it is on your side." They moved to another position and repeated the tactic. This time, Marcus used his knowledge of ice formations to collapse an overhang that blocked another path. Again, no one was seriously hurt, but the hunters were being forced to take longer, more difficult routes. By midday, the remaining search teams were exhausted and demoralized. Marcus could see them arguing among themselves. Their leader, a tall figure in dark armor, was clearly losing control of the situation. "They are not used to this kind of warfare," Zarathul said. "In space, battles are fought with energy weapons and shields. Here, the weapons are rocks and ice and wind." That afternoon, the hunters made their biggest mistake yet. Frustrated with the slow progress, their leader ordered them to use heavy weapons to blast through the mountain obstacles. Marcus felt the explosion before he heard it. The blast triggered a massive avalanche that swept away everything in its path. When the snow settled, one of the remaining aircraft was gone, buried under tons of ice and rock. "They just made the mountain very angry," Marcus said. The avalanche changed the entire landscape below them. Paths that had existed for thousands of years were gone. New cliffs and crevasses had appeared. Even Marcus, who knew every feature of this mountain, would have to relearn parts of it. But the change also created new opportunities. The avalanche had exposed a series of caves that had been hidden behind snow and ice. Marcus led Zarathul to explore them, looking for defensive positions. In the largest cave, they found something unexpected. Ancient paintings covered the walls, showing humans hunting and surviving in these mountains thousands of years ago. The images told stories of people who had learned to live with the mountain's power, instead of fighting against it. "Your ancestors were here long ago," Zarathul said, studying the paintings with fascination. "My people have always been here," Marcus replied. "We learned to survive by becoming part of the mountain, not by trying to conquer it." That evening, as they made camp in the ancient cave, Marcus taught Zarathul how to make fire using traditional methods. She watched him create flames from flint and steel with the same attention she had once given to complex star maps. "Your hunters use energy weapons and flying machines," Marcus said as he worked. "But they do not understand the most basic technologies. Fire, shelter, reading the weather. These are the tools that kept my people alive for millions of years." "I am beginning to understand," Zarathul said. "My people became powerful by building machines to control our environment. But your people became powerful by learning to adapt to any environment." The storm that hit that night was the worst Marcus had seen in years. Winds howled at over 100 miles per hour, and the temperature dropped far below what most humans could survive. But in their cave, with a good fire and proper preparation, they were safe. Outside, Marcus knew the remaining hunters were in serious trouble. Their equipment was not designed for this kind of storm. Their shelters would not hold against the wind. Most importantly, they did not have the knowledge to find natural protection. "Will they survive?" Zarathul asked, listening to the storm rage outside. "Some of them might," Marcus said. "But they will not be able to continue hunting tomorrow. The storm will damage their equipment and drain their energy supplies." Zarathul was quiet for a while, then asked, "Do you think I can learn to survive anywhere? Like your people do?" Marcus looked at her. In just a few days, she had transformed from a helpless crash victim into someone who could move confidently on dangerous mountain terrain. Her body was adapting to the thin air and extreme cold in ways that amazed him. "I think you already are learning," he said. "Your people had these abilities once. Being here is just reminding you how to use them." The next morning, the storm had passed. But the mountain looked different again. New snow had covered their tracks completely. The wind had rearranged the landscape, creating natural barriers and hiding places that had not existed before. Through his binoculars, Marcus could see the remaining hunters trying to regroup. Their leader was still alive, but most of his equipment was damaged. Only one aircraft remained functional, and it was having trouble flying in the unstable air currents created by the storm. "They will try one more time," Marcus predicted. "Their leader cannot go back empty-handed, but they are weak now, desperate. Desperate enemies are dangerous enemies," Zarathul warned. "Yes," Marcus agreed, "but desperate enemies also make the worst mistakes." He led her to a high ridge where they could see the entire area below them. From this position, they could watch the hunters' movements and plan their final strategy. "Tomorrow, we end this," Marcus said. "One way or another." The final confrontation came at dawn. The alien leader, General Ketvar, had managed to repair enough equipment to make one last attempt. His remaining soldiers looked exhausted and defeated, but he drove them forward with threats and anger. Marcus watched them approach from his position near the summit. They were climbing directly up the face of the mountain, using energy weapons to melt handholds in the ice. It was fast but dangerous, and it was exactly what Marcus had hoped they would do. "They are coming straight into our trap," he told Zarathul. She was working with pieces of technology salvaged from her crashed ship, trying to build something that could contact her people among the stars. Her movements were confident now, adapted to the thin air and brutal cold that had nearly killed her days earlier. I can get a signal out, she said, but I need more height and more power. Marcus looked up at the summit, still several hundred feet above them. We go to the top. But first, we deal with your general. The path Ketvar's forces were taking led them through a narrow canyon of ice. Marcus had been watching this formation for years, knowing that it was unstable. The recent storms and explosions had made it even more dangerous. When they reach the middle of the canyon, I will trigger a collapse, Marcus explained. But you need to be ready with your signal device. Once we start this, we cannot stop. Zarathul nodded. Her large eyes, now adapted to the bright snow glare, showed complete trust in his plan. Marcus waited until the hunting party was exactly where he wanted them. Then he used climbing charges from his pack to create carefully placed explosions in the ice walls above the canyon. The collapse was immediate and massive. Tons of ice and rock thundered down, completely blocking the canyon and trapping the hunters below. The avalanche also cut off their own escape route down the mountain. Now, there was only one way to go. Up. Now we climb, Marcus said. The final ascent to the summit was the hardest thing either of them had ever done. The air was so thin that even Marcus struggled to breathe. The cold was brutal enough to freeze exposed skin in seconds. The wind tried to tear them from the mountain face with every step, but Zarathul kept pace with him. Her body had completed its adaptation, developing abilities her people had not used for thousands of years. Her gill-like organs processed the thin air more efficiently than human lungs. Her skin had developed a natural resistance to cold that amazed Marcus. Your people could live on worlds like this again, Marcus said as they climbed. If they remembered. How? Maybe they will learn, Zarathul replied. After they hear what happened here. At the summit, Zarathul assembled her communication device, using parts from her ship and materials Marcus improvised from their climbing gear. The device looked like no technology Marcus had ever seen, but it worked on principles he could understand. Height for better signal reach, metal conductors to focus energy, and power sources working together. When she activated it, the response was immediate. Lights appeared in the sky, moving faster than any human aircraft. The rescue fleet had been searching for days, but the signal finally guided them to the right location. But other lights appeared too. Ketvar had survived the avalanche and had called for reinforcements. A battle fleet was approaching Earth, ready to destroy anything that got in their way. They will fight here, Zarathul said, watching the approaching forces. Your world will become a battlefield. Marcus made a decision that would change everything. No. We stop this before it starts. He helped Zarathul modify the communication device to transmit more than just a rescue signal. Using her knowledge of alien technology and his understanding of practical engineering, they created a broadcast powerful enough to reach both fleets. The message they sent was not just a call for help. It was evidence of the assassination attempt, proof of Ketvar's unauthorized invasion of a sovereign world, and testimony about what had really happened on the mountain. When the two fleets met in Earth's sky, they did not fight. Instead, Ketvar found himself arrested by his own people. The assassination plot was exposed, and the unauthorized attack on Earth was ended before it could begin. Representatives from Zarathul's people came to the summit to collect her. They were amazed to find their princess not only alive, but stronger than she had ever been. The trauma of the mountain had unlocked genetic potential that her civilization had thought lost forever. You could come with us, Zarathul offered Marcus, as the rescue ships prepared to leave. We could show you wonders among the stars. Technologies beyond your imagination. Marcus looked around at the mountain peaks that had been his life for so long. The alien ships were impressive, but this was where he belonged. I think I will stay here, he said. Someone needs to keep an eye on this mountain. Mountain. Before she left, Zarathul made a promise. Earth will be protected. I will make sure of it. And I will tell everyone what I learned here. That the people of this world are not primitive. They are the strongest people in the galaxy. After the ships disappeared into the sky, Marcus began his journey back down the mountain. He moved slowly, thinking about everything that had happened. In his backpack, he carried gifts from Zarathul's people, communication devices that would let Earth contact the galactic community when they were ready. But he also carried something more important: the knowledge that humans had impressed beings from across the galaxy, not with technology or weapons, but with determination, adaptability, and the refusal to give up when things seemed impossible. At the base of the mountain, Marcus was met by government officials who wanted to know everything about first contact with alien life. He told them the story simply. He had found someone who needed help, and he had helped them. The fact that she was from another world had not changed what needed to be done. Months later, Zarathul returned as Earth's first alien ambassador. She had changed the way her people thought about humans and worlds like Earth. No longer were they considered death worlds. Now they were called forge worlds, places that made people stronger. She found Marcus on his mountain, guiding a group of new climbers through basic survival training. "I kept my promise," she told him. "Earth is under our protection now, and my people are learning to appreciate what humans can teach them." Marcus smiled as he watched his students practice building shelters. "Good. Maybe next time someone crashes on this mountain, they will already know how to survive." "Maybe next time," Zarathul said, "they will not need to survive alone. I'm self. I'm made form one. I'm made form one." She stayed for a week, learning more human survival techniques and sharing stories of the changes happening across the galaxy. When she left again, it was not goodbye. It was the beginning of a friendship between worlds. Marcus returned to his mountain, content with the knowledge that Earth now had protectors among the stars. But more than that, he knew that humans had proven something important. They belonged in the galaxy, not as conquerors or servants, but as teachers of the most valuable lesson of all. Sometimes the most advanced technology was the human spirit that refused to quit.